The stars were silent and cold, shining like silver dust in the endless black sky. A lone human ship moved slowly between them, small and fragile compared to the vast universe. Inside the ship was a man named Captain Elias, a traveler, a fighter, and sometimes just a lonely soul searching for meaning. He had seen many worlds, fought many battles, and lost many friends, yet the silence of space still made him feel empty. One night, while his ship drifted near a dead asteroid field, his scanner picked up something strange. It was a faint distress signal, weak and broken, like a whisper on the wind. Elias frowned, his fingers tapping on the control screen. A distress signal here, in this empty part of the galaxy, was a mystery. He knew it could be a trap. Pirates often used fake signals to lure ships, but something in his heart told him to check. He followed the signal, and soon his eyes widened. Floating among the rocks was a wrecked alien vessel. Its surface cracked and burned, its lights dying. The ship looked like it had been hunted, pieces torn apart by weapons fire. Through the cracks he could see dim lights, faint movement, like shadows clinging to life. Elias powered down his weapons to show no harm, then carefully connected his ship to the alien wreck. The door opened with a hiss, and he stepped inside. The air smelled of smoke and fear. The walls were covered in strange glowing symbols, scratched and fading. And then he heard it, a soft cry, not the cry of a soldier, not the roar of a monster, but the trembling cry of a child. He moved deeper into the wreck, his boots echoing on the broken floor. There in the corner, hiding behind a broken panel, was a figure. It was an alien woman, her skin pale blue, her body weak and bleeding. She held 3 small creatures close to her chest, her arms shaking, her eyes glowing faintly with pain. The children were tiny, triplets, each with small, delicate faces and wide golden eyes filled with fear. They looked at him not as an enemy, but as a giant shadow who could bring life or death. Elias froze, his heart pounding. He had fought aliens before. Many wars had painted humans and their kind as enemies. But here, in this broken ship, he did not see enemies. He saw a mother protecting her children, too weak to fight, too tired to run. The mother's voice cracked as she tried to speak. It was a language he did not understand, yet the meaning was clear. She was begging him not to harm her children, begging for mercy. Elias knelt slowly, removing his helmet so she could see his face. He placed his weapon on the ground to show he meant no harm. The children stared at him with wide eyes, trembling but curious. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small water pack. He offered it to the mother, and after a long pause she took it with shaking hands. Her lips touched the water, then she gave it to her children. One by one, the triplets drank, their golden eyes softening with relief. For a moment, silence filled the wreck. Elias looked at them and felt something he had not felt in years. A spark of warmth, a spark of duty. He knew if he left them here, they would die. The ship was dying, its systems failing, the air growing thin, and somewhere out there, whoever attacked them might return. He took a deep breath, his voice calm but firm. "You cannot stay here," he said softly, even though he knew they did not understand the words. "I will take you." The mother shook her head weakly, fear flashing in her eyes. She did not trust humans, but her children clung to Elias's arm, their tiny fingers gripping his suit as if they felt safer with him. The mother looked at them, then at Elias, and her eyes filled with tears. At last, she nodded slowly, surrendering her fate to him. Elias carried the children in his arms, while the mother limped beside him. Step by step, they moved through the broken corridor back to his ship. The wreck groaned around them, metal cracking as if it knew its end was near. When they reached his ship, the doors closed behind them with a heavy sound. The alien mother collapsed on the floor, too weak to stand. The children stayed near Elias, holding his leg, whispering soft sounds in their strange tongue. Elias felt the weight of destiny pressing on his shoulders. He had saved them, but he knew this was only the beginning. Somewhere beyond the stars, enemies were searching for them. Somewhere, a great danger was waiting. As he looked at the fragile family before him, one thought burned in his mind. He could not turn back now, and far away, in the dark of space, a red light blinked on a distant screen. The signal of the wreck had been found by others. Hunters were already coming. The human ship floated through the darkness, carrying 4 fragile lives that had almost been lost. Captain Elias sat at the controls, his eyes heavy but sharp, scanning the stars for threats. Behind him, in the small medical bay, the alien mother lay weak, her breath shallow, her skin pale blue like fading ice. Beside her, the 3 triplets clung together, their golden eyes glowing faintly in the dim light, their small voices whispering in fear. Elias knew the truth. This rescue was only the first step. The mother was dying, and the children were too young to survive alone. He had saved them from the wreck, but now he had to keep them alive. And every second the wreck's distress signal echoed into the void. Enemies could follow it straight to him. He moved quickly, activating the ship's medkit, the machine's word, scanning the alien mother, translating her strange biology into numbers and warnings. The screen flashed red. Her wounds tree deep, and her blood carried toxins from burned metal. Elias muttered under his breath, "Damn, she won't last long without help." Still, he refused to give up. He cleaned her wounds, sealed her cuts with healing gel, and injected a universal stabilizer into her veins. She flinched, whispering in her alien tongue, but her eyes showed she understood. He was trying to save her, not harm her. The triplets watched with wide eyes, their small hands gripping the edges of the bed. One of them reached out, touching Elias's arm softly. The gesture was simple, but it felt like trust. For a man who had walked through battlefields full of death, that small touch felt heavier than any metal. Hours passed, and the mother's breathing grew steadier. Though her strength had not returned, Elias gave the children packets of water and soft food from his supplies. They tasted it carefully, their faces lighting up when it eased their hunger. The smallest one even let out a sound, a gentle laugh, a sound so pure it filled the cold metal room with warmth, but peace never lasted long in space. The ship's alarm suddenly beeped, red lights flashing across the control screen. An incoming vessel closing fast. Elias's blood ran cold. He pulled up the data. The ship was small, fast, armed. It was a hunter craft. No mistake, someone had followed the signal of the wreck. He rushed back to the bay. The mother opened her glowing eyes weakly, fear shining inside them. She tried to rise but collapsed, her body too broken. The children cried, clinging to her, then turning their frightened eyes to Elias. In that moment he realized, they looked at him not as a stranger, not as a soldier, but as their only shield. Elias knelt, his voice calm even though his heart pounded like thunder. "You'll be safe, I promise," he whispered. They did not understand his words, but they understood his tone. He gently lifted the triplets, placing them in the hidden chamber of his ship, a small, safe compartment with oxygen and warmth. He covered them with a soft blanket. The mother looked at him with tears in her eyes, her lips moving as if to say thank you. The hunter ship hailed him, a harsh voice filling his radio. "Human vessel, you carry what is ours. Hand over the alien brood and you will live." Elias clenched his fists, his eyes narrowing. His voice came back sharp and steady. "Over my dead body." He powered up the engines, his ship roaring as it pulled away from the asteroid field. The hunter followed, firing beams of light that cut through the void. Elias weaved his ship through the rocks, using every piece of cover, his hands moving with skill born of years of survival. The hull shook as fire grazed it, sparks flying inside the cockpit, but he did not stop. The triplets trembled in their safe chamber, hearing the thunder of battle outside. The mother closed her eyes, whispering prayers in her alien tongue, her weak body shaking. She did not know if this human could really save them, but her heart wanted to believe. Elias pulled a sharp turn, cutting power for a moment and letting the ship drift behind a massive rock. The hunter overshot, confused. That was his chance. He powered the thrusters again, sliding under the hunter's blind spot and fired his own cannons. The blast hit the hunter's wing, sending it spinning off course. Elias growled, sweat on his forehead. "This isn't over." The hunter steadied, coming back stronger, more furious. Elias knew his ship could not survive a long fight. He had to be smarter, not stronger. He remembered the wreck, remembered the faint signal echoing in the stars. An idea sparked in his mind, risky but possible. He boosted his transmitter, copying the wreck's signal and throwing it into the far side of the asteroid field. The hunter's radar caught it, thinking the aliens were hiding there, and turned away to chase it. Silence returned, heavy and cold. Elias let out a long breath, his hands shaking but his spirit firm. He returned to the bay. The triplets peeked out of their hiding place, their small faces lighting up when they saw him alive. They rushed to him, hugging his legs, their tiny voices making soft sounds of joy. The mother opened her eyes, weak but filled with relief, and for the first time she looked at him not with fear, but with hope. Elias sat on the floor, the children in his arms, the mother resting nearby. He stared at the endless stars through the window, knowing this was only the beginning. He had made enemies by saving them, and more hunters would come. But deep inside, he felt something powerful. A bond had been born, a bond no war could erase. The stars stretched like rivers of silver light, but Elias had no time to admire them. His ship sped forward, engines screaming, metal trembling, alarms flashing red. Behind him, on the radar screen, 3 hunter crafts appeared, sharp and fast, moving like wolves in the night. They had traced him, they had not fallen for his trick for long, and now they were hunting him like prey. Elias gritted his teeth, pushing the thrusters to their limit. The ship shook, warning lights blinking, But he did not slow. He glanced at the medical bay through the small screen. The alien mother lay weak, her chest rising slowly. The triplets huddled around her like small stars of hope. He whispered to himself, "I can't fail them. Not now." The hunter ships closed in, firing bursts of light that cut across space. Elias twisted his vessel, weaving between broken asteroid fragments. Rocks exploded behind him as enemy fire slammed into stone. The children screamed, their voices echoing through the intercom, and the mother reached out weakly to hold them. Her golden eyes met Elias's face on the screen, not with fear, but with trust. It was silent, but it was a message. She was trusting him with their lives. Elias's hands moved fast across the controls, his mind racing. He remembered his days as a fighter pilot, when every second was life or death. Back then he fought for orders, for commanders who barely remembered his name. But now, he fought for something real, for a family that was not his blood, but had become his heart. The hunters spread out, trying to corner him. One came from the left, another from the right, the third rushing straight behind. Elias smirked. "You think you've got me," he muttered, "but you don't know humans." He cut the main thruster, letting the ship drop suddenly into the shadow of a massive asteroid. The hunters fired, missing him by meters, the blasts shattering into the rock. Elias reactivated the thrusters, blasting upward, slipping through their trap. The triplets cheered softly, their voices tiny but filled with excitement. They clapped their small hands, even though they did not understand the danger fully. Elias chuckled under his breath, feeling their joy give him strength. But the hunters were not finished. They regrouped quickly, their ships glowing with cruel red light. Elias scanned his map, searching for an escape route. Then he saw it. A gas field nearby, a storm of thick clouds swirling with lightning. It was dangerous. One wrong move and his ship could be torn apart. But it was also a shield, a chance to hide. He turned the ship sharply toward the storm. Alarms blow. Airing as he entered the gas field, the world outside became chaos, glowing clouds, electric sparks, and waves of energy crashing like oceans in space. The hunters followed, though slower, cautious of the storm. Elias grinned. "Good, be careful, I won't." He drove straight through the storm, weaving between lightning arcs, his ship groaning under the strain. A bolt struck one of the hunters, tearing its wing apart. The ship spun out of control, vanishing into the storm. The triplets gasped, their golden eyes wide, clinging tighter to each other. The mother whispered faintly, her lips moving in her alien tongue. A prayer, or maybe a thank you. Two hunters remained, still closing in. Elias's ship shook as energy waves battered it, warning lights flashing again. "Hold together," he muttered, patting the console like it was a living friend. He pushed harder, diving deeper into the storm, the hunters following desperately. He pulled a sharp turn, hiding behind a thick cloud, shutting down his engines for a moment. The hunters scanned, confused, their sensors blinded by the gas. Elias waited, his heart pounding, sweat dripping down his face. The triplets pressed their small faces against the glass of their safe chamber, watching him, waiting. The hunters drifted closer, unaware he was just above them. Elias reignited the engines, bursting forward, firing his cannons at point-blank range. The blast tore through one hunter, flames lighting the storm, pieces scattering into the clouds. Only one enemy remained now, more furious than ever. The last hunter chased him through the storm like a predator that refused to give up. Its weapons fired again and again, beams cutting dangerously close. Elias pulled every trick he knew, rolls, dives, sudden stops, but the hunter stayed locked onto him. He gritted his teeth. "You're stubborn, I'll give you that." The mother, still weak, lifted her head and spoke in her trembling voice. Elias did not understand her words, but her tone was clear. She was telling him to be strong, telling him not to give up. He spotted the edge of the gas field ahead, beyond it a stretch of calm stars, but the hunter was faster now, ready to strike. Elias whispered, "One more gamble." He slowed just enough to let the hunter come closer, its cannons charging for a final blow. Then at the last second, Elias cut power again, dropping beneath its fire. The blast streaked above him, hitting a massive lightning cluster. The cluster exploded, energy ripping outward, consuming the hunter's ship in a storm of light. The shockwave tossed Elias's vessel forward, but he held steady, bursting out of the gas field into clear space. Silence returned, broken only by the hum of his battered engines. Elias leaned back, exhausted but alive. The triplets ran to him, hugging his legs and arms, their golden eyes shining with relief. The mother, tears in her eyes, reached weakly for his hand. In that moment, Elias realized something deep. They no longer looked at him as just a rescuer. They looked at him as family. But far away, beyond the stars, other signals were already moving. The hunters would not stop. Their masters would not forgive. This chase was only the beginning. The ship floated quietly now, far from the storm and the hunters. Inside, Captain Elias finally allowed himself to breathe, his hands no longer shaking, though his heart still carried the weight of the chase. The hum of the engines filled the silence, steady and calm, a rhythm of survival. In the small medical bay, the alien mother rested, her pale blue skin slowly gaining color, her breathing soft but stronger than before. The triplets stayed near her, though their eyes often wandered to Elias, their golden glow curious and warm. Elias checked the systems, patching the damage, sealing leaks, and watching the fuel levels drop lower than he liked. But in between his work, he found himself looking back at them, the mother and her children, all. He had saved them, yes, but something else was happening, something deeper. They were no longer strangers to him, they were becoming something more. When he entered the bay, the triplets rushed to him without fear, their small hands reaching for his arms and clothes. They laughed in their soft, alien voices, the sound strange yet pure. Elias smiled, for the first time in years a true smile, not the bitter grin of a soldier, but the gentle smile of a man who had found meaning again. He pulled out a small tablet, the kind used for maps and notes. He drew a simple picture of a star with his finger and showed it to them. The triplets tilted their heads, then one of them copied the star with clumsy little hands, leaving uneven lines across the screen. They laughed again, proud of their work, and Elias chuckled. Good, very good, even though they could not understand the words. The mother watched from her bed, her eyes soft, her lips curving into a faint smile. Days passed slowly, the ship drifting toward a safe zone he had chosen, a neutral planet far from the hunters. In those days, a bond grew piece by piece. Elias shared his food with them, showing the triplets how to open packets, how to sip water without spilling. He taught them small human words, pointing to himself and saying, Elias. They tried to copy, their voices uneven but full of effort. As. Hearing his name in their voices sent warmth through his chest. In return, they spoke their own names, strange sounds filled with melody. Elias repeated them clumsily, and the children giggled every time he got it wrong. One night, while the children slept close to each other, Elias sat beside the mother. She was still weak, but her eyes were sharp, glowing in the dim light. Through a translator device patched into his ship, her words finally began to reach him. Her voice was slow, broken, but filled with honesty. My people, do not trust humans, she said, her gaze steady. They fear you. They say you bring only war. Elias looked down, his jaw tight. He had heard such words before. I know, he whispered, and maybe they are right. Humans have brought war. I have seen it with my own eyes, but I am not here to fight you. She studied him for a long moment, then lowered her gaze to her children. They live because of you, she said softly. They smile because of you. Her words struck him deeper than any weapon ever could. Elias told her pieces of his past, not in detail but enough for her to understand. He had lost his family long ago in a war he could not win. He had traveled the stars since then, searching for something he could not name. And now, as he looked at her and her children, he wondered if this was what he had been searching for. The triplets woke and crawled into his lap, their golden eyes shining like small suns. They played with his gloves, pulling at the straps, laughing when he made silly faces. The mother watched, silent but filled with emotion, tears shining in her eyes. In that moment, Elias was not a soldier, not a wanderer. He was a guardian, a protector, a father in their eyes. But peace was fragile. Elias's scanners soon showed new warnings. The path to the neutral planet was blocked by enemy fleets. Rows of hostile ships filled the sector like a wall of fire. Elias frowned, his hands tightening on the controls. They know, he muttered. They know she is alive, and they want her back, or dead. He glanced back at the family, the mother meeting his eyes. He did not need words. He could see the truth in her face. The hunters would never stop. The war between their races would never allow this fragile peace. But still, she looked at him with hope, as if saying, You are different. You can protect them. Elias stood, his voice firm though quiet. We'll find another way, he said. The triplets clung to his legs, their eyes full of trust, their small voices humming softly like a song. Elias felt his heart tighten, the bond between them now unbreakable. The stars outside were cold, the enemy fleets waiting like predators. But inside the small human ship, warmth had been born, a bond between species, between a soldier and a mother, between a lonely man and 3 fragile children, a bond that no war could erase. And as the ship drifted closer to danger, Elias knew one thing for certain. He would fight for them, he would bleed for them, he would never let them go. The ship drifted in silence, but the silence was not peace. On the radar, enemy fleets glowed like sharp red scars across the stars, blocking every path forward. Captain Elias sat at the controls, staring at the screen with hard eyes. He had fought battles before, but never with lives so fragile depending on him. Behind him, the alien mother and her 3 children rested, unaware of how close the enemy was. Elias's mind raced, his fingers tapping on the console. There were too many ships, far too many for him to fight alone. His vessel was fast, clever, but it was not a war machine. It could not break through a fleet. He closed his eyes for a moment, hearing the laughter of the triplets from earlier, remembering the way they clung to him with trust. Then he opened his eyes again, sharp and steady. If he wanted them to survive, he needed a plan, one that might cost him everything. He walked into the medical bay. The mother sat up slowly, her golden eyes watching him. The triplets were playing with his tablet, drawing crooked stars and circles, laughing with their soft voices. Elias knelt down, brushing his hand through their hair gently. Then he looked at the mother, his voice quiet but firm. "There is only one way through," he said. "I must distract them. I must draw them away, so you and the children can escape." The translator buzzed as it turned his words into her language. Her face changed, fear and anger mixing together. "No," she said firmly, her weak voice carrying surprising strength. "You cannot. You are the only reason they are alive. If you leave, if you die, they lose their father." Elias froze at her words, his heart tightening. Father. She had called him father. The triplets looked up at him, their golden eyes wide and shining, as if the word was true in their hearts as well. He swallowed hard, shaking his head slowly. "I am not their father," he whispered, "but I can be their protector, and sometimes a protector must sacrifice everything." The mother's hands trembled. She reached out, gripping his arm, her touch weak but desperate. "You have already given them hope," she said. "Do not take it away. We face this together." The triplets crawled onto his lap, pressing their tiny heads against his chest. Elias felt their warmth, their small heartbeats against his armor. He wanted to believe there was another way. He wanted to believe he could fight and win, but the screen in the cockpit did not lie. The enemy outnumbered them 100 to 1, and more ships were surely on the way. He stood, carrying one of the children in his arms, the others holding onto his legs. "I will make a plan," he said at last. "But you must promise me this, no matter what happens, you must keep them alive." The mother's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded slowly. "I promise," she whispered. Elias spent hours at the console, his mind drawing paths, calculating risks. The plan grew in his mind like fire. Dangerous, but the only chance, he would send out a false signal, a copy of the alien ship's distress code. But stronger, louder, brighter. It would pull the enemy away, make them believe the mother and children were somewhere else. Then he would use the storm belt nearby to hide their real path, guiding them to a secret route toward a neutral station. But to send the signal, someone had to stay behind. Someone had to keep the enemy's eyes locked while the others escaped. Elias knew that someone was him. He felt the weight of the decision pressed down on his chest, heavier than any armor. Yet when he thought of the triplets' laughter, when he thought of the mother's eyes full of trust, he knew he could carry it. Later, he sat with them in the bay, the triplets crawling over him, their small hands pulling at his gloves, their voices filled with innocent joy. The mother watched, silent tears slipping down her cheeks. Elias forced a smile, hiding the storm inside his heart. For one brief moment, he let himself enjoy it. The warmth, the bond, the feeling of family he had not felt in so many years. He knew it might be the last moment he ever felt it. The warning lights blinked again, the enemy fleet shifting closer. Elias stood, his face set like stone. "It is time," he said quietly. The mother rose shakily, moving to stand beside him. "We will not leave you," she said, her voice trembling. "We will not let you die alone." Her words shook him, but he shook his head firmly. "If you stay, they die too," he answered, his voice breaking but strong. "You must take them, you must go, and you must live, or all of this means nothing." The triplets clung to him, not understanding his words but sensing the weight in his voice. They cried softly, golden eyes wet with tears, their small fingers refusing to let go of his arms. Elias knelt, hugging them tightly, his eyes closing, his voice a whisper. "I will always be with you, no matter where I am, no matter where you go." When he awed again, his decision was clear. The plan was set, the sacrifice chosen. The mother looked at him, her tears shining like stars, and for the first time she bowed her head to him, not in fear, but in respect. "You are their father now," she said softly. "Even if you deny it, they will always see you as such." The engines roared, the signal pulsed into the stars, and far away, the enemy ships turned. The chase was about to begin again, but this time, it was Elias who would stand alone. And as the stars burned cold around him, his heart burned hotter than ever. He was ready to sacrifice everything for the bond he could no longer deny. The stars outside the window burned cold and distant, but inside Elias's ship, fire filled his heart. The false signal had been sent. Enemy ships shifted like wolves chasing new prey, their formations scattering into the distance. For a moment there was silence. For a moment it felt like hope. But Elias knew better. He knew the hunters. He knew they would not stop until every path was sealed. He turned to the mother and her children, standing in the narrow corridor, the triplets clutching her hands with tiny, trembling fingers. Her golden eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, filled with fear but also with trust. Elias knelt down, brushing the children's cheeks with his hand. "This is where you go," he whispered. "The storm belt will hide you. Follow the coordinates I set, and you will reach safety." The translator buzzed, carrying his words into her language. She shook her head, tears already shining. "No," she said. "We will not leave you. We are family now. Family does not run while one stands alone." Elias's chest tightened, her words cutting deeper than any blade. He wanted nothing more than to go with them, to protect them not just today, but for every tomorrow. But the radar screen told him the truth. A massive warship was closing fast, stronger than the hunters before, a giant shadow of steel. He stood, awed, his face set like stone. "If I stay, they chase me, not you," he said firmly. "If you stay, they kill us all." The triplets clung to him, their small voices crying out, their golden eyes wet. Elias hugged them tight, his arms shaking. "You must live," he whispered. "You must carry her light. Carry my light." The mother reached out, her hand pressing against his chest, right over his heart. Her weak voice trembled. "Then we fight with you, even if it means we fall together." The ship shuddered as the massive warship arrived, its red lights spreading across the stars like fire. Elias looked at the enemy, then back at them. "Then we fight together," he said at last, his voice heavy with both sorrow and strength. He rushed to the controls, the mother moving beside him, her weak hands glowing faintly as she pressed them against the energy core. Strange symbols flickered across the console, alien energy merging with human technology. The ship hummed louder, stronger, alive with their unity. Elias looked at her in surprise, but she only gave him a faint smile. "My people gave me this gift," she whispered. "Now, I give it to you." The warship opened fire, beams of light cutting through the void. Elias pushed the ship forward, weaving between blasts, his hands flying across the controls. The children screamed, holding each other, but their eyes never left Elias, their trust burning brighter than fear. He fired back, blasts of human steel mixed with alien light, striking the enemy with shocking power. The warship trembled, its shields glowing, but it did not fall. More hunters arrived, smaller ships circling like vultures. Elias growled, sweat dripping from his face. "Too many," he muttered, but his eyes burned with fire. He remembered every battle he had survived, every loss he had endured, and every smile of the children he had saved. If this was the end he would make, at an end the stars themselves would remember. The mother cried out in her language, her voice filled with strength. The ship glowed brighter, its engines roaring with alien energy. Together, human and alien power merged, the vessel flying faster, striking harder. Elias laughed bitterly. "They'll never believe this, a human and alien fighting as one." The mother gave him a faint smile. "Let them fear mercy," she said softly. They dived through the enemy formation, blasts firing in every direction, hunters exploding in bursts of light. The warship roared, its cannons charging, beams brighter than suns. Elias turned sharply, barely dodging the blast, but the shockwave tore through his hull, alarms screaming, flames sparking. The children cried out, the mother shielding them with her body, her strength failing but her will unbroken. Elias gripped the controls, his voice rough. "We can't hold much longer," he muttered, "but if we fall, we'll take them with us." He prepared the overload sequence, ready to sacrifice his ship, ready to burn with the enemy. The mother looked at him, her eyes shining with sorrow and respect. "You are one of us now," she whispered. "A father, a protector, a warrior of light." The sequence ticked down, the engines glowing like fire. The warship loomed larger, its shadow swallowing the stars. The children hugged Elias, their small voices crying his name. As. The sound struck him harder than any weapon. He froze, tears in his eyes. He could not let them die. Not like this, not in fire and darkness. Then, as if the stars heard his heart, another light appeared. From the edge of the void, ships arrived. Not hunters, not enemies, but human vessels. Their cannons blazed, striking the warship with thunder, scattering the hunters like frightened birds. Elias's eyes widened, disbelief flooding him. "Reinforcements," he whispered. They came. The warship turned its fire toward the newcomer. Giving Elias a moment. He canceled the overload, pulling the ship back from the edge. The mother slumped against the wall, her eyes closing, whispering words he could not understand, but he felt the meaning in his heart. Hope, relief, family. The battle raged outside, but for the first time, Elias knew they might survive. The last stand was not his alone. It was theirs, together. The battle outside burned like a storm of fire across the stars. Human ships and enemy hunters clashed, beams of light cutting through the void, explosions blooming like suns in the dark. Inside his battered vessel, Captain Elias held the controls with steady hands, guiding his ship through the chaos. Beside him, the alien mother sat weak but alive, her golden eyes glowing faintly. Her 3 children huddled close, their small faces pressed against the glass as they watched the miracle unfold. Elias could hardly believe it. He had prepared to die, ready to burn himself and the enemy in one final blaze. But against all odds, human reinforcements had arrived, answering a signal he had not even known was still echoing. They fought like thunder, driving the hunters back, forcing the great warship to retreat with smoke trailing across the stars. For the first time since this began, hope filled the air. The radio crackled, a familiar voice filling the cabin. "This is Commander Valen of the Sol Fleet," the voice said. "Identify yourself. You are not authorized in this sector." Elias smirked, his voice rough but steady. "Name's Elias, and I've got precious cargo." The commander's voice sharpened. "Cargo?" Elias glanced at the mother and children, his voice softening. "Not cargo, family." The mother tilted her head, not fully understanding his words, but sensing the warmth in his voice. She placed her hand gently on his shoulder, her touch weak but filled with gratitude. The triplets pressed against him, their golden eyes glowing, their small voices whispering his name. Elias. It was not perfect, but it was pure. And in that moment, Elias knew, no matter what the universe said, he was their father now. The Sol Fleet cleared a path, escorting his damaged ship toward a neutral station on the edge of the system. Elias guided the vessel slowly, his eyes never leaving the stars, still wary, still alert, but for once, the danger felt distant. Inside, laughter echoed, the triplets chasing each other clumsily through the narrow halls, their voices like music in the cold ship. The mother watched them, her face soft, and then she turned to Elias, her voice weak but clear through the translator. "You gave them more than life," she said. "You gave them hope. You gave them a father." Elias looked at her, his throat tight. "I never thought I would be that again," he whispered. Her eyes shimmered with tears, and for the first time since he met her, she smiled, not faintly, not weakly, but with true light. When they reached the neutral station, medical teams rushed to take the mother and her children. Elias followed, refusing to leave their side. The doctors worked fast, their machines scanning her body, their voices sharp. But soon the news came. "She will recover," one doctor said. "She is strong. She only needed time and care." Elias exhaled, a weight lifting from his chest. The triplets clung to him, refusing to leave his arms, their golden eyes watching him as if afraid he would vanish if they let go. Days passed on the station, the war outside still raging, but inside those walls, a fragile peace bloomed. Elias spent his hours with the children, teaching them human words, laughing at their strange accents, learning their alien songs in return. He showed them the stars on maps, telling them stories of worlds he had seen. They listened with wide eyes, and sometimes they fell asleep in his lap, safe and warm. The mother grew stronger each day, her steps steady again, her voice firm. "Shao." He spoke with him often, telling him about her people, their traditions, their dreams, their fears, and in turn he told her of his world, of Earth, of the oceans and forests and skies her children had never seen. One evening, as the station lights dimmed to mimic night, the mother sat beside him, the triplets asleep nearby. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "My people will not understand this," she said. "They will not understand why I trust a human, why my children call one father." Elias looked at her, his face calm. "Then let them hate me," he said softly. "As long as they live, as long as they smile, I can carry that weight." Her eyes filled with tears, and she reached out, taking his hand in hers. "No," she said, "you will not carry it alone. You are family now." The triplets stirred in their sleep, murmuring his name, their voices like soft music. Elias closed his eyes, letting the sound fill his heart. For years he had drifted through the stars, lost, empty, searching for something he could never find. Now he had found it, not in victory, not in battle, but in mercy, in love, in the bond between species that should have been enemies. Beyond the station, the war still raged, fleets clashing, hunters searching, the galaxy trembling. But inside this fragile sanctuary, a new story was being written, not of hate, but of hope, not of enemies, but of family. And as Elias stood by the window, the alien mother at his side, the triplets asleep in his arms, he whispered a vow to the endless stars. They will grow, they will live, they will never fear again, not while I draw breath. The universe had feared humanity for its power, but now, it would remember humanity for its mercy, and in the hearts of 3 golden-eyed children, one man was not just human, he was father, protector, and home.